We're going to kick off this list over in Germany, where the manager has done something that genuinely stunned the entire football world. Manuel Neuer, the goalkeeper who had already retired from international duty after the last Euros, is back, at 40 years of age. And not just back as a backup option, no, he's back as the confirmed #1 starter. Now here's what makes this so striking. The coaching staff had spent a serious amount of time building up another goalkeeper as Germany's undisputed first choice, a man who played throughout the entire qualifying campaign. Right up until the week before the squad was announced, that goalkeeper's own understanding of the situation was that he would be the one starting at the World Cup. And then, just like that, the manager changed his mind completely. His explanation went something like this, that after many conversations, they came to understand the 3 best goalkeepers in the country all belonged at the World Cup, so they spoke with Neuer, he agreed to come back, and they're now planning around him as the #1. The manager even admitted openly that the decision landed as a real blow for the keeper who'd been promised the spot. And there's an extra twist that makes the whole thing even messier. Neuer had previously described his retirement as something that was set in stone, completely final. He reversed that decision after a run of outstanding Champions League performances for his club. But here's the kicker. The very same week the squad dropped, his club confirmed he actually needs rest because of muscular problems in his calf. So let's be honest about what's really going on here. The other goalkeeper's caps and his entire qualifying campaign simply could not compete with Neuer's enormous tally of over 120 appearances for the national side. And that, right there, is the whole story. That is not football logic, my friend. That is not a decision based on who has earned the shirt over the last 12 months. That is a legacy overriding absolutely everything else in the room. When you've got a keeper who carried the country through qualifying, who was told the job was his, and he gets shoved aside the moment a 40-year-old legend signals he's available, you're not picking on form anymore. You're picking on reputation and nothing else. It's the kind of call that feels safe to a manager under pressure, but from the outside it reads as fear. The fear of walking into a tournament without a familiar giant standing between the posts. And the next name on this list takes us over to England, with Jordan Henderson. He first came back into the national team's thinking when the manager described him as the glue holding the group together, right there in his very first squad announcement. Henderson, now 35 years old and playing his club football at a mid-table side, wasn't even part of the wider squad picture at the last Euros. His final cap before this manager arrived dated all the way back to a November nearly 2 years earlier. And yet, not only did the new manager recall him, Henderson has appeared in every single squad since that moment without exception. His entire case is built on leadership, on experience, on dressing room presence, and almost nothing else. By just about any honest assessment, he is nowhere near the country's best midfielder when you judge purely on current form. And here is where it stings, because with several genuinely creative, in-form midfielders reportedly left out of the final cut, England may be walking into this tournament having sacrificed creativity for character, having traded moments of genius for a calming voice in the tunnel. And look, you understand the logic on some level, man. Tournament football is brutal, the pressure is suffocating, and a manager wants someone in that dressing room who has been there, who steadies the younger players when a knockout game is slipping away. But at a World Cup, where a single flash of brilliance decides who goes home and who goes through, leaving your most inventive players at home is a gamble of the highest order. If it works, the manager looks like a genius who understood the human side of a squad. If it goes wrong, if England crash out of a tight knockout game lacking that one player who could have unlocked a stubborn defense, this is exactly the decision he'll be judged on, and judged harshly. Henderson is a fine professional and a respected leader, but respect in the dressing room doesn't break down a low block in the 90th minute. And the next name on this list brings us to France, who have their very own version of this exact debate, just with a slightly warmer reception from the public. N'Golo Kanté is 35 years old, playing his club football over in Turkey, and he's heading to his 3rd World Cup. For a bit of context on what that actually costs, a brilliant 22-year-old midfielder from one of the biggest clubs on the planet, a player who was a World Cup finalist not long ago, got left out of the squad entirely. The manager pointed to that younger player's difficult, injury-disrupted season at club level, and fair enough, that's a reasonable thing to flag. But here's where it gets interesting. Because Kanté is operating in the very same non-elite European league tier that gets other players criticized so harshly, and yet he receives a completely different verdict. So why is that? Because the manager trusts him in a way he simply does not trust anyone else for that specific defensive midfield role. Kanté's reading of the game, his uncanny ability to snuff out the opposition's momentum and shield the backline, is genuinely irreplaceable within the way France set up. The veteran, a World Cup winner already, brings something to that midfield that nobody else in the entire squad can replicate, and that's just the honest truth of it. So the criticism here isn't that he's washed up or useless, far from it, man. The criticism is that France might be rewarding a legacy while younger, hungrier options sit and wait for a chance that may never come. And there's an added layer to all of this, because the manager himself has confirmed that this will be his final tournament in charge. So is this a masterstroke? A wise old head who knows exactly what a tournament demands? Or is it a sentimental farewell? A coach reaching for an old, trusted soldier on his way out the door? Honestly, that question only gets its answer once the ball is actually rolling. If Kanté glides through midfields the way he used to, it's genius. If his legs finally betray him on the biggest stage, the doubters were right all along. And the next name on this list is Memo Ochoa. 40 years old, currently playing his football on the island of Cyprus, well off the radar of the elite leagues. And he's about to become one of the very few footballers in the entire history of the sport to appear at 6 different World Cups, keeping company in that rarefied bracket with names like Messi and Ronaldo. And there's a little extra weight to this one, because after the tournament wraps up, Ochoa has confirmed that he will retire from football entirely. This is genuinely the final chapter. His legendary saves against Brazil over a decade ago and that famous penalty stop against one of the world's deadliest strikers at the last World Cup turned him into a global icon, a goalkeeper known far beyond his own country's borders. He's racked up well over 150 caps for the national side, an absolutely enormous total. But, and this is the part we can't just ignore, he's 40 years old, he's playing his club football in Cyprus, and his country happens to be co-hosting this entire tournament. Younger goalkeepers, the ones who represent the actual future of that position, need these minutes and this experience far more than a 40-year-old in the twilight of his career does. So what's the honest read on this one? It's pretty clear, man. The country is giving a beloved legend his perfect farewell, on home soil, in front of his own people, at the very tournament that made him famous in the first place. And here's the thing. This one feels less like a cold football selection, and more like a ceremony, a sending off, a thank you for everything he's given over the years. And genuinely, it's really hard to be angry about it. Unlike some of the other names on this list, where younger talent is being shoved aside purely out of a manager's fear, this one carries a warmth to it. Sometimes a squad spot isn't about the next 90 minutes. It's about honoring what a man meant to a footballing nation. And if any player on this planet has earned that kind of send-off, it's probably him. And the next name on this list keeps us in Germany, because the manager's loyalty to familiar faces doesn't stop with one player. Leroy Sané is also firmly on the plane. After leaving his big club on a free transfer last summer, Sané made the move to Turkey and the league there, and his debut season at his new home produced 7 goals and 9 assists across 43 competitive appearances. Now those aren't disastrous numbers by any stretch, but they're hardly the output of a man you build a World Cup attack around either. And here's the part that makes this one so striking. The manager himself admitted at the squad announcement that Sané's numbers at club level simply weren't high enough. He said it out loud, in public, and then he picked him anyway. His justification leaned entirely on the international side of things, 5 goal contributions across the national team's last 4 matches. So the club season wasn't good enough on its own merits, but a handful of strong international outings kept him safe and kept him on the list. And the players paying the price for this are the ones with genuinely stronger club campaigns behind them, attackers who were in sharper form all season long, now sitting at home watching the tournament on television. And this man, this is the part that fans of that country know all too well, because they've watched this exact story play out for the better part of a decade now. Every manager, every cycle, someone looks at Sané's enormous ceiling, at that explosive talent everyone knows is in there somewhere, and thinks to themselves, this is the tournament he finally delivers on it all. That belief has been renewed more times than most supporters can even count anymore. It's the eternal promise, the player who always looks like he's about to become world class and somehow never quite gets there on the biggest stage. And so once again, the gamble is being made, the talent winning out over the form, the potential winning out over the production. Whether it finally pays off this time around is anybody's guess, but the pattern itself is impossible to ignore. And the next name on this list, with Sweden, is a genuinely different kind of case from the others, because here, reputation might actually turn out to be the correct call. Alexander Isak joined his new club for a fee north of £120 million last summer, and he then went on to suffer one of the most injury-disrupted debut seasons you could possibly imagine. A broken leg, just 8 league starts across the entire campaign, a grand total of 4 goals in all competitions. And perhaps most telling of all, he missed his country's entire World Cup playoff campaign, sitting on the sidelines and watching as his nation booked its ticket to the tournament without him even kicking a ball. And despite all of that, the manager still named him in the final squad. His reasoning was refreshingly honest, that if Isak hits top form, he is a world-class player, plain and simple. And that's the genuine case for him, man, because there's no real debate about the quality here. Isak at full fitness is comfortably the most dangerous attacker his country has, by a significant margin, the one player capable of producing something out of nothing against a top defense. So the debate around this one isn't about his talent at all. It's purely about his sharpness heading into the single biggest tournament of his entire career, having barely played any football for months. A striker arriving at a World Cup with just 8 league starts to his name is a real, genuine gamble. There's no way around that. Match rhythm isn't something you can fake, and timing in front of goal is the first thing to abandon a player who's been stuck on the treatment table. But, and this is the crucial difference with this one, sometimes a reputation exists for a very good reason. Sometimes betting on a proven, elite-level talent to rediscover his best is smarter than playing it safe with someone who simply doesn't have the same ceiling. It's a gamble, absolutely, but it might just be the right one. And the next name on this list takes us over to Brazil, with Fabinho earning himself a mention here. The former Premier League midfielder has been plying his trade in the Saudi League since a move there a few seasons back. Now, the question with this one isn't really whether he's been performing at an elite level, because he plainly hasn't been. The far more interesting question is whether playing your football outside of the top European leagues should even count as a reliable pathway into a national squad that possesses this much depth in midfield. This is a country absolutely overflowing with midfield options, and yet here we are. His mobility, that engine that defined his best years, was already noticeably declining even before he made the move away from European football. And yet the manager trusted him enough to include him in the squad regardless of all that. And look, there's a logic to it that you can't completely dismiss, man, because tournament football very often rewards familiarity over raw form. Managers want bodies in that dressing room they know, players who understand the system instinctively, and Fabinho clearly still holds a certain level of the coach's trust. That much is obvious from his inclusion. But from the outside looking in, it reads like a side choosing comfort over evolution. It reads like a team reaching for the safe, known quantity, instead of backing one of the many younger, hungrier midfielders banging on the door for an opportunity. And this is especially frustrating for a midfield that, by any reasonable standard, really should be refreshing and renewing itself heading into a new cycle. When you have that kind of talent pool waiting in the wings, handing a spot to a fading veteran operating well outside the elite leagues feels less like a calculated decision and more like a manager clinging to a comfort blanket. It's not the headline-grabbing pick of this whole list, but it fits the exact same pattern, trust, and reputation winning out over what the form on the pitch is actually screaming at everyone. And the final name on this list is the most discussed selection of the entire tournament, Neymar. The country's all-time top scorer hasn't pulled on the national shirt in almost 3 years now. After tearing his knee ligament a couple of years back, he spent 2 long years fighting his way back to fitness, and a disastrous spell in the Saudi League produced just 7 appearances across 2 entire seasons. He then returned to his boyhood club at the start of last year, and his season there. 6 goals and 4 assists in 15 appearances, capped off by a heavy 3-0 defeat in what turned out to be his final audition before the squad was announced. And then, just 2 days after the manager named him in the World Cup squad, Neymar picked up a calf problem in training, with the medical staff now said to be monitoring the process. The very same manager who, just weeks earlier, had publicly stated he would only call up players who were physically ready, somehow still kept him in regardless. Meanwhile, a striker who scored 20 goals across all competitions in a stunning debut campaign at a major club, who was voted his club's player of the season by a huge majority of the fan base, was left at home. The manager himself admitted it was very difficult and said openly that he felt sad for players like him. That's the coach acknowledging the injustice out loud, man. And even now, Neymar remains the face of the country's football. But this tournament should have been the moment the keys were finally handed over completely to the next generation. Instead, the second he walks into that dressing room, the entire narrative shifts back onto him. It has happened at every single major tournament he's been a part of. The team's whole identity funnels through one man. The pressure becomes suffocating, and when it goes wrong, it goes spectacularly wrong. We've seen it before, and there's a clear pattern of over-relying on him to the point where it stunts the collective. Including him now risks repeating that exact cycle, except this time with a version of Neymar who can barely stay fit for 90 minutes. And that's the whole point, really. World Cups are never, ever picked on merit alone. Managers get cautious, they reach for the names they trust, for the players whose presence feels safe in a dressing room creaking under pressure. And the informed young talents of the world are the ones who pay the price for it. But for as long as football has had its legends, tournaments have been built around protecting them, even when every number on the page is screaming otherwise. So do you think we left anyone off this list? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel here. And be sure to turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video. Football with IA, I'll catch you next time.